In today's video, me and my brother Quinn are going to be walking through a highly requested topic, which is our top 10 list of aggressive cichlids. Cichlids are known to be aggressive, but some species require some extra care when setting up their tank or trying to keep them with any other tank mates, and we're going to walk through that today, so let's dive right in. One of the first things you may think of when it comes to cichlids is just their aggressive nature, and there is no doubt that cichlids tend to be much more aggressive than some of your other types of community fish. Cichlid aggression can vary based on many different factors. We did a full video on managing cichlid aggression, which I'll leave in the description below, but a few tips to mitigate that aggression is to have an adequate tank size, proper tank mates and tank setup, rearranging your decor at times, definitely avoiding breeding, adding dither fish, or even overstocking your tank when it comes to some African cichlid tank setups, but ultimately some fish will just always be aggressive no matter what you do. Many of the cichlids me and my brother Quinn are going to walk through in today's video are notorious for being extra aggressive in just about any circumstance. Some of these fish need to be kept in very specific setups in order to coexist with others, or they just need to be kept solo. Another thing to mention is that although the cichlids on this list are definitely aggressive the majority of the time, you could get lucky with an individual being more docile, since each cichlid can have its own personality. The same can be said to the top 10 list we did on peaceful cichlids, which I'll also leave in the description below, but some of those fish could be aggressive as well, depending on the individual cichlid. So moral of the story is that there are certainly outliers to every fish on this list, but usually these will be the top 10 aggressive cichlids you'll find in the hobby. Coming in at number 10 is the Texas cichlid, or Carpintus. The Texas cichlid is one of the most aggressive Central American cichlids out there, especially when you have a big dominant male. It can be really tough keeping these fish long term with anything other than just a male and a female. We have been pretty lucky with the Texas cichlid in Billy Donovan's cichlid tank. It's been working out with some other semi-aggressive fish like the Jack Dempseys and Fire Mouse. However, this is definitely not the norm, and we're still keeping an eye on this tank to see if we ever have to remove it. The extra space in this 180-gallon tank definitely helps with territorial aggression. Sometimes Texas cichlids can be more docile when they're young, and then become hyper aggressive as adults, especially if breeding comes into the mix. They are beautiful fish though, with emerald greens and light blue with some unique patterns along the body. Big males may even get a bit of a nuchal hump on their heads, which adds a really cool dimension to this fish as well. Number 9 on the list is the Heterotilapia Butterkoferi, also known as the zebra tilapia. This is an African cichlid, but it is actually not from the big lakes. It comes from the West African rivers, and it's definitely one of the most aggressive cichlids in the hobby. Although they aren't very commonly found, they are awesome fish to see in person, with a great size to them and striped white and black coloration. I almost bought one a few years ago at my local fish store before I did more research and realizing that these guys would terrorize all the different South American cichlids that I had at the time. I decided against it, but always wish I would have had a tank available at the time to hold this guy solo. It's a beautiful fish that is more on the rare side, but it would make for a great pet fish in a large tank.
Hey, what's up guys? Quinn here. Coming in at number 8 on our list is the Demasoni. Demasonis are a type of Mbuna species, and they are one of the most aggressive cichlids out there. They really need to be kept in groups of 12 or more with a higher female to male ratio to mitigate aggression. They can definitely terrorize an African cichlid tank, and especially a community aquarium, so many people will keep them as a solo species in a large group. They are a dwarf cichlid, so they stay relatively small and have some great color patterns to them. One of my favorite Mbuna, but you definitely need to be smart about their setup to avoid aggression issues. Coming in at number 7 on our list is one of my personal favorites, and that is the Salvini Cichlid. I absolutely love the Salvini due to its unique coloration. The yellows, the reds, and even the electric blues really make this fish pop. I had a female a few years ago, and she got more aggressive as time went on. I eventually had to rehome her since she wouldn't play nice with my Jack Dempsey and Green Terror. The Salvini might work best in a 6-foot tank or larger, as they are very territorial. A beautiful fish and one of my favorites, as I said, but also one of the more aggressive cichlids out there.
With a name like the Malawi Eye Biter, it just makes sense that this fish landed on the list. I feel a bit odd being the cichlid bro that's talking about Malawi haps, but Alec is on vacation, so I'll do my best. The Malawi Eye Biter is a very unique cichlid with a narrow body and pointed face. It's a hap that is built for predation on smaller fish and Mbuna, and usually their prey is hiding within rocks. They obviously have a reputation of going after the kill around the eyes of a fish, and they can really be a menace in any tank with improper tank mates. Alec has a large 220-gallon hap tank with similar sized predatory haps, which are really the only tank mates we'd recommend with one. Even with this setup though, the Eye Biter was very aggressive at times and was the primary hap causing issues in this tank. He eventually picked one too many fights and got a punch right back from the other haps, and although he unfortunately did not make it, it's definitely a fish we'll own again due to its unique shape and coloration. They might just be worth the hassle and the aggression.
Now on to number 5, we're going to group two very similar species together, and that is the yellow jacket cichlid and the jaguar cichlid. We group these together since they are similar parachroma species. I have a yellow jacket cichlid in my 90-gallon tank in my classroom, and he's being kept solo for a reason. They are known to be extremely territorial and aggressive cichlids. You can even see this guy's teeth poking out there. It's always fun watching this guy attack food as well. They have some awesome bright yellow coloration with black patterns throughout the body. Jaguars are very similar in temperament, but usually have more of a golden/tan coloration compared to the yellow jacket cichlid. Both species get very large, so you'll have to dedicate a big tank and likely keep them alone or in a breeding pair. I think it's well worth it though because of that beautiful color and their aggressive nature. The Auratus Cichlid comes in at number 4 on our list. It is another type of mbuna and probably the most aggressive mbuna out there. They have really great color and patterns along their bodies, so it's very easy to see why they're popular and sold in most stores. However, these guys can be absolute terrors in most setups. Even a great mbuna cichlid tank could be in trouble if you add an Auratus. Sometimes they'll behave for a few months, but typically that aggression will come out eventually and they can wind up killing most fish in the tank. So buyer beware when it comes to this mbuna.
Coming in at number 3 on the list is a cichlid that some hobbyists tend to either love or hate, and that is the Flowerhorn. This fish can be polarizing because of that massive nuchal hump that most males get. Flowerhorns are also a hybrid fish, which some may frown upon as well, and most are bred from cichlids like the Trimac, the Red Devil, Texas Cichlid, Black Nasties, just to name a few. Each of these fish are aggressive in their own right, but that mixture of genetics has seemed to make Flowerhorns just ultra aggressive. We wouldn't recommend any tank mates for Flowerhorns long term. They might work out for a short time, but eventually they'll probably kill anything in their tank. Flowerhorns are often shown in competitions, and owners will groom their Flowerhorns with a mirror or picture of another fish just to rile them up. This process gets their vibrant colors and even that nuchal hump to grow a little bit more just as a sign of dominance. So just picture that behavior with other fish in the tank, and yeah, it's just not going to end well. You could maybe add a male and female Flowerhorn to a tank, but you'll likely need a separator long term, as the female usually gets beat up. Otherwise, we just recommend keeping them as a solo pet fish. They have a ton of personality to make it worthwhile. Number 2 on the list are a few Amphilophus species, which are the Red Devil and Midas cichlids. The Red Devil and Midas are very closely related, and to be honest, can be confusing telling them apart at times. I went ahead and grouped them as both can be very aggressive cichlids, and I just love the orange and white coloration that both species will get, along with that large size and at times a small nuchal hump as well. Red Devils are even more notorious for its aggressive nature than the Midas, and most will say that they also have to be kept solo. I've seen very large tanks that have Red Devils play nice for a little bit, but usually that aggression will get too much over time. Even in something like the 600-gallon cichlid tank we toured a while back, the Red Devils are just so aggressive that eventually it's just not going to work out with tank mates. I definitely want to get a Red Devil or Midas soon, and I'll likely need to set it up with just one or a pair in that tank, but I do think it would be an awesome setup. And then coming in at number 1 on the list is the Dovii, also known as the wolf cichlid. Dovii are extremely aggressive fish, even by cichlid standards. They also grow to a massive size, even reaching 2 feet long. Due to the sheer size and aggressive nature, Dovii aren't commonly kept except with very experienced fish keepers that may have a very large tank. They do get some awesome coloration though, and the size alone can be very impressive. They are also said to have a very high intelligence level, which can definitely be an allure for most that are looking into getting Doviis. These Doviis here were very small juveniles at my local fish store, and they are already fighting and extra aggressive at this point. I would just love to have a massive tank with a couple Doviis at some point in the future. And just real quick, here are a few honorable mentions that narrowly missed the list. The Jack Dempsey, for one, is sometimes known to be very aggressive, being named after a famous boxer, but many times you'll get docile Dempseys, and as long as you have a decent sized tank, they'll usually be just fine. The same can be said for the Green Terror, which usually has a worse reputation than it really can be. Oscars are one of the most polarizing cichlids in this debate, since each individual can be so different. Mine is completely peaceful, but I have heard of some very aggressive individuals. I just think a lot of Oscars are kept in too small of tanks, which leads to a lot of issues with some Aquarius. And then lastly, the Cichlid probably should be on the list, but they aren't too common, so they narrowly missed it. But that does it for our top 10 list of aggressive cichlids. I hope you found that entertaining or helpful. If you've had any experiences with aggression of any of these fish or any that weren't on the list, make sure to leave that down in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.